studios of the Metro News Radio Network in Morgantown, this is West Virginia's premier sports talk show.
From Weirton to Welch, Martinsburg to Matewan, and all points in between, this is the Northside Automotive Statewide Sportsline.
Tonight's show is brought to you by Northside Automotive, Route 19 in Summersville. We'll beat the advertised price of any other dealer in the state, guaranteed. And now, sitting in for Tony Caridi, here's Garrett Cullen.
And across the state of West Virginia, welcome in Wednesday night edition Northside Automotive Statewide Sportsline. Garrett Cullen and the coach, Greg Hunter, will be with you until 7 o'clock tonight, streaming at the website, wvmetronews.com. Coach Hunter, it was nice for you and Tony and Brad to all be back together yesterday. First time since, what, September?
Yeah, September 25th that we were all together.
It was short-lived.
And now you and I haven't done a show
it's been
by
a while
ourselves
too.
Maybe in a week.
Yeah, it's been a little while.
Couple.
A little while, but we've got a full show coming up today. Here in just a couple of minutes, Jonathan Martin's going to join us, BlueGoldNews.com. First day of the signing period for junior college transfers. So we'll get that update from Jonathan coming up here in just a second or two. 6:20, we'll look ahead to the Capital Classic tomorrow. Steve Cotton, Marshall's play-by-play guy, he'll join us on the show. Then we'll do some football discussion with Stephen Lassett of Athlon Sports. They put out they do their own all-conference awards and players of the year and things like that. So we'll do some bowl discussion with Steve and get into the Big 12 awards that they put out earlier this week. Also, Mountaineer head basketball coach, may have heard of him, Bob Huggins, and some of the players meeting with the media earlier today. If we have some time at the end of the show, we'll get into a couple of cuts from Coach Huggins as he looks ahead to the game against Marshall. Let's go ahead to the phones. Our pleasure now to be joined by Jonathan Martin, BlueGoldNews.com. Jonathan, how you been, man?
Hey, good, guys. How are you?
We're doing all right. Now, you've got a couple busy weeks here coming up. You're probably always busy, but first day of signing period for the junior college transfers. Lay it out for us. What should we expect for WVU in terms of those potential early enrollees?
Yeah, well, we kind of went into today thinking there was potential to be a busy day, but ended up being pretty quiet. As many may know, West Virginia had a junior college cornerback commitment, Elijah Battle, who actually flipped his commitment today and signed with Minnesota. So a little bit of a hit there. But about a month or so ago, West Virginia targeted several junior college defensive backs. Battle was one that kind of stood out above the rest for a couple of reasons. One, they felt like he could play, and but also because he could enroll early, and they had went after him hard. Had him on campus for a visit, and actually got a commitment from him there just a couple of weeks back. And he took a visit to Minnesota last weekend, and that ended up kind of winning out. So today he flipped over. Still a little bit of time left. There's a couple other of the guys through the junior college ranks, Mike Daniels, which is a cornerback, Tyrell Chavis, which is a defensive tackle, Malcolm Pridgeon, which is an offensive lineman. So there's a couple names still out there, but so far pretty quiet.
Jonathan, first of all, in terms of Battle, has anyone gotten any comments from him on why he decided to ultimately sign with Minnesota instead of West Virginia?
Yeah, well, I will say this. I talked to him last night, and he made it clear to me that it was just a decision that he really struggled with. Junior college kids are a little bit different than out of high school for a couple of reasons. One, they've been through the process before. Two, their windows, closed in terms of how long they can necessarily play. So they look for schools for different reasons. And he told me last night that there was, just a couple of reasons why Minnesota had become neck and neck with West Virginia, and he just felt like it was more of a playing time. He has 3 years to only play 2, and he felt like that. In the end, Minnesota just offered him the chance to get on the field earlier. So, like I said, it's for different reasons for different kids. For him, it was basically playing time. He felt like he would get it quicker at Minnesota.
You mentioned some of those other names there. Give me one or two of those guys who would be the biggest key in terms of getting in here early.
Well, I think that you'd have to go to Tyrell Chavis, probably as a defensive tackle. Which is still a little bit of a question mark on whether or not he can do that. But he's a kid that he's 4-star on Scout.com. Schools are just all over him. Auburn, who he's took a visit to, West Virginia. Early on, coming out of high school, he had Alabama, Florida, several schools. He's a big kid, 6'3", 6'4", over 300 pounds. Could walk in and obviously would have to put the work in, but talent-wise, need-wise, he could play. And he really likes West Virginia. Going back to what we spoke with Battle, it's playing time. He likes the fact that he could potentially come right in and play, and so he's definitely somebody to watch.
Jonathan, this signing period, which, as you said, starts today, only is for junior college kids who will enroll for the next semester. So this is sort of a select few who could sign today. West Virginia does have 2 other junior college players on their commitment list in Wesco and Kazir White. Neither of those are going to be able to enroll in January, right?
That's correct. I double-checked with him last night just to, anytime you deal with junior college, it seems like it's, a little more dot your I's, cross your T's type things. But, yeah, both said that, they're not signing this period. However, good news for West Virginia, it does pretty much feel positive for the West Virginia fans that those guys are going to stick to their commitments to West Virginia. I know Penn State's making a really, really strong push with White, but as of right now, it's all things point to sticking with West Virginia. They're just not going to sign this period.
How about some of these high school seniors? And quarterback Cody Saunders, they're out of Florida. He had mentioned potentially enrolling early. Are there any others that could be enrolling early from those high school seniors?
Yeah, the landscape across high school football into college football has changed drastically over the last couple of years. It seems like with every year, more and more and more kids are enrolling early. By my count, there's 8 total kids for West Virginia on the commit list that will enroll early. There's potential for 2 more that's still kind of up in the air. So as of right now, there's 8 that have confirmed with Blue Gold News that they are going to enroll early. And the thing is, it's at positions of need. You mentioned Cody Saunders. It's important. Coach Holgerson's even said, if you can get on campus and you can start lifting, you can just get the atmosphere, just be around the team, how much more it does for you. Defensive line has a couple kids, Jeffrey Puller, a big kid out of Ohio, Reese Donahue in state, Wes Tonkery, a safety. So there's about 8, and a lot of them at positions, all of them, I guess, could be a need, but at positions where it feels like if they get in, get a head start, learn a little bit, hang around the team, get a chance to lift and work their bodies out with the team, that they could potentially contribute a little earlier. So anywhere between 8 to 10 kids slotted to enroll early, which is a huge number.
Yeah, very much so. Jonathan, West Virginia, the NCAA dead period for recruiting has now started and will last until mid-January, until after the coaches' convention is over. So there's a long period before you get into active recruiting again, and then at that point, there won't be a whole lot of time before signing day. So that last 2 or 3 weeks, it'll be sort of a rush. Give me some of the kids that you think West Virginia is going to make a real strong push for at that point, obviously, who aren't on the commitment list right now.
Yeah, and recruiting it changes so fast. So, there could be a kid out there that's really not even mentioned much with West Virginia, and there could be something as little as a coaching change elsewhere that kind of tips the scales a little bit. But, I think West Virginia is really going to look at maybe add another receiver. They definitely want a linebacker in the class. There's 2 out of Florida who I think West Virginia will really look hard after. Both visited officially a couple months back, Boshawn Joseph and Emmett Rice. Emmett Rice was a commit to Florida State, has backed off of that, and Joseph a commit to Florida. Both appear to be on the market, and so I think West Virginia will look hard there. They had a kid, Giovanni Haskins, who's a tight end hybrid style kid on campus last weekend, just before the dead period hit, and I look for them. So those are 3 kids that really you want to keep an eye on. And then, like I said, it literally changes daily. You never know what may happen. The last 2 weeks before signing day are just a mad dash, and so you never really know what's going to happen. So there's a lot of names that could pop up, but those are 3 that I reckon will be targeted.
certainly you mentioned linebackers, and while West Virginia has a couple of linebackers already on the commitment list, obviously Brendan Ferns is a name that we talk about, so I got to ask the obligatory
Are we
Brendan
still talking
Ferns,
about him?
Yeah, question. And then there's another junior college linebacker or a junior college linebacker that's gained a lot of interest not only from West Virginia but a lot of others, and from a school Mountaineers are familiar with it in Lackawanna. I don't know if I'll get the name right. Capri Dockett?
That's Capri Doucette.
Doucette. There you go. So,
unfortunately, if he commits to West Virginia, Tony will have to get that one down. But
after some he's dealt with, that won't be difficult for him. So, but give us the latest on both Ferns and Doucette.
I remember having a segment with you guys months, and when I say months, I'm talking 3 or 4, and the Brendan Ferns recruitment was still going, and at that point, we kind of felt like a decision was coming, and it just went another month, and then we thought a decision. At this point, you're looking at primarily 2 schools, as it's always been, West Virginia and Penn State. Notre Dame has really tried to get in the mix, but he's not. He's talked about a visit there, but that's been pushed back. So until they can really step up and get him on campus, it's really hard for me to include him. But it is West Virginia, Penn State. Depending on who you talk to, depending on what day of the week, you'll get a different answer as to where they think he'll end up. I will say that for the longest time, I felt like West Virginia was the landing spot. I'm not so sure about that now. Some of the sources close to the Ferns and just around the recruitment in general say that Penn State's just made a great impression, that they've kind of hunkered down in the city where he's at, and then just kind of a lot of the family and people close to him, and really have just done an excellent job and kind of maybe pushing ahead. So at this point, I'd say Penn State maybe took a slight lead, which could be why you see West Virginia looking to maybe go elsewhere. And Capri Doucette is very good. He's a junior college linebacker that was just the named first-team All-American. He's got offers from West Virginia, of course, Arizona, where he took an official visit last weekend. Iowa State offered him today, so Louisville's in the mix. Very good. It could potentially step right in. So, again, 2 names to really watch moving forward.
All right, man, good stuff from you. As always, appreciate the time, and we certainly encourage folks to check out your stuff as we keep following these early enrollees, and then certainly all the way through signing day as well at bluegoldnews.com. Appreciate it, man.
All right, guys. Thanks.
There you go. That is Jonathan Martin, bluegoldnews.com. So you had one guy there in Battle who switches ultimately, Elijah Battle, and signs with Minnesota. So
yeah, and again, I mean, flips happen each and every year. You just don't want to have too many of those. We'll see, what happens from here if West Virginia has to deal with too many of these others. But again, West Virginia has a number of defensive backs on their commitment list, or guys that are likely to be defensive backs, but still a junior college guy that you thought maybe could help you with that position next year and compete right away. It's always difficult to lose that one.
All right, we've got a break to take. When we come back, we'll shift focus to the Capital Classic coming up tomorrow night from Charleston, Marshall, and West Virginia. Heard play-by-play voice Steve Cotton. He's going to join us, and we come back right after this.
A study from England shows that men spend more time each day looking at themselves than women. Well, believe that study or not, the point is we all want to look our best all the time. Well, the same holds true for businesses. We judge businesses, in fact, by their look. At Pikewood Creative, we produce videos and commercials that make businesses look their very best. And you know what? It improves their business. They get more customers and clients. If you'd like your business to look better, then check us out at pikewoodcreative.com.
You know who taught me to use a hands-free device while driving? My mom. She scared me to death all through school with that phone up to her ear, driving us back and forth. Now that I'm on the road solo, I tell my mom, I'm worried about you. Go hands-free with the phone when you're driving. I do. It's important to set a good example for parents, so when she rides with me, I turn it off, put it down, and just drive.
The West Virginia Department of Transportation, saving one life at a time.
The Northside Automotive Statewide Sportsline returns in 2 minutes. On Metro News. For 30 years, the voice of West Virginia.
almost there. Just 5 more minutes. Almost home.
Statistics show that 80% of auto fatalities occur close to home on rural roads.
Gosh, cops.
That's why law enforcement is stepping up rural patrols and cracking down on impaired driving. If you are over the limit, you are under arrest because drinking and driving don't mix. Remember, over the limit, under arrest. This message brought to you by the Governor's Highway Safety Program.
This fall, not all blockbusters are movies. The Jeep Black Friday Blockbuster Sales Event. It's the must-see event of the year. Well-qualified current lessees of competitive vehicles get a low-mileage lease on the 2015 Grand Cherokee Laredo for $279 a month.
Wednesday night edition, Northside Automotive Statewide Sportsline. Garrett Cullen, Greg Hunter again will be with you until 7 o'clock tonight, streaming at WVMetroNews.com. Still to come, the Metro News High School Sportsline, 7:06 until 9 o'clock. I will move over a couple of chairs, and Kyle Wiggs will jump in here, and we'll knock that show out from 7:06 until 9 o'clock. A bunch of guests tonight, including Coach Hunter, little Jared West.
Oh, really?
Jared West Jr. will be joining us, Notre Dame junior guard. That'll be second half of the show, and we'll have live streaming of that show, WVMetroNews.com. Let's go to the phones. Now, again, our pleasure to be joined by Steve Cotton, the Marshall play-by-play voice. Steve, how you doing, man?
Doing well. It's that week, isn't it?
Yeah, it's that time of the year again. That time of the year. They just keep moving it up, and now it sneaks up on you almost.
Yeah, just about. But Marshall's looking forward to it. A little better week than they started the year with, and they lost the first 6, but 3 wins in a row, and Marshall's starting to, like I say, play a little bit better.
Yeah, that's what I was going to start with. 3-6 for the Herd coming in. They have won 3 straight. They've been shooting the ball better of late in that 3-game winning streak. What's been the difference over the past week and a half or so? Has it simply been shooting?
Yeah, in Dan D'Antoni's system, up and down, and take the first open shot, the first good shot that you have. Don't waste any time, and don't pass up good shots. You better make them, and especially from beyond the three-point line. His offense is predicated on making three-point shots and getting layups, because when you make the three-point shots, you make everybody guard the whole floor, and it opens things up for your so-called big guys. Marshall doesn't have a whole lot of size inside, but it starts with shooting the ball for Marshall with Austin Loop, who'd gotten off to a slow start from beyond the three-point line. And, in fact, he'd gone 5 games and made 5 of 23s. He shoots typically more than that and certainly makes more than that. Well, the last 3 games during the win streak, he is 17 of 27, and that has opened things up like it's supposed to. And the 2 post players, Ryan Taylor and James Kelly, during those 3 games, are combining to hit over 70% of their 2-point field goals, and most of them have been right at the basket, a bunch of dunks, a bunch of layups.
Steve, certainly Loop is the best outside threat, but he's not the only. But they've got a lot of guys who can score. I mean, 5 players for the Herd in double figures, and obviously John Elmore also now just getting eligible. He's a scoring threat as well. Is balance a key for this Marshall club?
It's the balance, and like you say, 5 and now 6 with Elmore. You have to figure his contributions are going to be significant fairly quickly as he gets incorporated into the offense. But there's also a bit of people who were around when Dan D'Antoni was playing for Marshall. a little bit of the mentality. They were known as the Iron Men, playing for Ellis Johnson, 5 guys who rarely came off the floor. The substitutions were rare, and they were short. And he's got a little bit of that going now. There aren't a whole lot of minutes beyond the first 6 guys. And so that's a little bit of what's contributing to the fact that you have 5 double-digit scores. So those guys are, and Coach says it's more mental than it is physical. We're going to run you enough in practice and all that to get you in shape to be able to do that, but you have to not buckle when the time comes and not be the ones to bend down and grab your shorts or put your hands up behind your head and show any sort of weakness. And during the 3-game win streak, that's been pretty evident. Marshall has taken teams who play more, play 7, 8, even 9 guys, gotten the score up into the 90s. Marshall's guys playing a whole lot more minutes, and at the end of the game, you can tell it's been Eastern Kentucky and it's been North Carolina Central that was the team that was worn out.
Again, we're speaking with Marshall play-by-play voice Steve Cotton. How about Ryan Taylor and James Kelly for the Herd? Taylor putting up 16 points per game. Kelly 16 points as well, nearly 10 rebounds per game. He's got a double-double in 3 of his last 4 outings. So what have their roles been this season?
Well, they are both very good athletes, and people who've been paying attention to Marshall, or at least this game the last couple of years, know that Ryan Taylor has been a key part of what Marshall's been doing for the last 3 years now. Kelly, the transfer, one of the better athletes that we've seen at Marshall in quite some time. Just physically gifted, a big, strong guy who can run up and down the floor very well. He has the outside shot, although his three-point percentage is low so far. You watch him in practice, you know he can make that shot. So he goes all over the floor, and he's just an explosive leaper. He dunks the ball about as easily as anyone I can remember watching regularly. So he's the athletic guy. Ryan Taylor just does his job. He's very consistent, although Taylor had a 27-point game, his career high last time out. The game before that, Kelly had 27 points. And again, both of those guys are getting quite a few easy baskets because of what's been going on with the shooters beyond the three-point line. Now, caveat with all of that, Marshall has not faced in the last couple of weeks a defense that's even remotely like what the Herd's going to run into tomorrow night.
Rebounding an issue, as you said, this isn't a big team. There's only one starter at least bigger than 6'5", and that's James Kelly, who's got plenty of size. But is he the lone wolf on the glass?
Well, Taylor kind of does his thing there. He's usually good for 7, 8, 9 of them, but that has been a problem, and especially during those first 6 games of the year, rebounds were at times few and far between for Marshall. So it's that's something they've really, and there's a little bit of, because of the system, that's not quite as high a priority as for some. You think back to the John Beeline idea.
Sure.
That for him, the rebounding was not the big statistic, and there's a little bit of that going on with what Marshall's doing, but still, there were some games with, you get out rebounded by 20. That's not good in anybody's system.
Yeah, I'm looking down here through the roster, and Coach D'Antoni's made it a point, hasn't he, of getting those in-state guys, 5 guys on the roster with in-state ties, including John Elmore, like you've talked about. Stevie Browning's contributed significantly. You look at C.J. Burks as well, former Hedgesville standout. So it's a lot of in-state flavor on this roster overall.
Yeah, and he hopes that that continues. And, Dan himself was overlooked by a lot of folks and came to Marshall and made really good things happen. A guy who, took the team, or his team went to the NIT Final Four back when the NIT was even more of a big deal than it is these days. So he played with a chip on his shoulder, and he thinks that there are guys who get overlooked in the Mountain State who can do the job on the college level. So he says when those guys come in, several of them are walk-ons, but he's going to give them a shot.
How good is one of those guys, John Elmore, just getting his feet under him now that he is eligible one game at Marshall? But a lot of people think he can be very good. He certainly was in high school. How good can he be at Marshall?
Watching him run the show in practice over the last year after he transferred at the semester break from VMI a year ago, he's the real deal as a point guard, distributing the ball and making really quick decisions. The ball, he doesn't stand out front and yo-yo that thing. He gets it going, makes quick decisions. He's also enough of a scorer that people are going to have to really respect that. There's going to be no sagging off him. And so I think long-term, he's going to be a very significant part of whatever Marshall's success might be this year. Short-term, though, not only is he still trying to get up to speed, but he suffered an ankle injury a couple of weeks ago. So he's not up even as much as he would be to game speed, and just in terms of his wind and that kind of thing. So it's probably going to be another couple of weeks, at least a couple more games, before he is close to physically what Marshall's going to need him to be.
Yeah, and certainly he'll be important tomorrow against West Virginia's pressure defense. How have you seen Marshall face anybody that applies pressure at all like West Virginia? How do you think they'll handle West Virginia's press?
The only one that is even in the same stratosphere, and I'm not going to say that they're close to as good as what the Mountaineers are, Morehead State. I don't know if you've kept an eye on anything they're doing this year. That is a really good basketball team, and it is all about the defense and in-your-face pressure the whole time. So Marshall has seen it once, didn't have very much success that game, and is going to have to handle that pressure a whole lot better. Other than that, not a whole lot of teams that have played that kind of pressure and nowhere as successfully as West Virginia's done it.
All right, good stuff, Steve. Appreciate the time, as always. Looking forward to tomorrow night, and I'm sure we'll catch up with you down the road.
All right, have a good one, guys.
Thanks, Steve.
There you go, Steve Cotton, Marshall's play-by-play voice. Had a tweet from someone just a little bit ago saying they were wondering if this, in fact, was the last year for WVU Marshall's contract. If so, any movement on future games. And it'll be interesting to watch that here moving forward. Both sides have had a little bit of a back and forth over the past, few months.
Yeah, and I'll admit I don't know the situation with the contract. Typically, these are contracts that it's not like football where they go out,
right,
for a decade. But it probably when signed was multi-year at that point in time. I don't know how many years, if any, are left on that contract, though. It's certainly something that will be talked about. And even Bob Huggins this afternoon during his presser was asked about that, though his answer certainly didn't shed much light on what his thoughts are about the future of this game.
Yeah, if we have time here in that final segment, I'll get to Coach Huggins and those comments about that. But when we come back, we're going to shift over to some football. Stephen Lassen will join us. Athlon Sports. We'll talk Big 12 football, look ahead to some bowl games as well, that conversation. Coming up next as the Northside Automotive Statewide Sportsline continues.
Someday, we'll go to the edge of the galaxy. But for now, you can go to the ends of the earth in a Jeep brand SUV. Find your adventure in the Jeep Grand Cherokee, the most awarded SUV ever. Catch a show of shooting stars underneath the night sky in the Jeep Cherokee, the 2015 four-wheeler of the year. And go far, far away in the Jeep Renegade with up to 31 mpg highway. Hurry into the Jeep year-end blockbuster sales event. Going on now.
Star Wars The Force Awakens, December 18th, rated PG-13.
Purchase and get 0% APR financing for 75 months or $3,500 total cash allowance on the 2015 Jeep Cherokee Limited 4x4. EPA estimate 1.4-liter engine with manual transmission. 0% APR financing for 75 months equals $1,333 per month per $1,000 financed for well-qualified buyers through Chrysler Capital regardless of down payment. Residency restrictions apply. Take retail delivery by 1/4/16. Jeep is a registered trademark of FCA US LLC.
As a cyclist, we make choices. We choose which motorcycle manufacturer to buy from. We choose what type of motorcycle we ride. We even choose where and when to ride. We also choose to ride straight, alcohol and drug-free. Alcohol is involved in 50% of motorcycle fatalities in West Virginia. That's 1 in 2 drivers who die each year. Don't become a statistic. Ride straight, alcohol and drug-free. Presented by the West Virginia Department of Transportation, Governor's Highway Safety and Motorcycle Safety and Awareness Program.
The Northside Automotive Statewide Sportsline returns in 2 minutes. On Metro News. For 30 years, the voice of West Virginia.
This fall, not all blockbusters are movies. The Jeep Black Friday Blockbuster Sales Event. It's the must-see event of the year. Well-qualified current lessees of competitive vehicles get a low-mileage lease on the 2015 Grand Cherokee Laredo for $279 a month.
Almost there. Just 5 more minutes. Almost home.
Statistics show that 80% of auto fatalities occur close to home on rural roads.
Cops.
That's why law enforcement is stepping up rural patrols and cracking down on impaired driving. If you are over the limit, you are under arrest because drinking and driving don't mix. Remember, over the limit, under arrest. This message brought to you by the Governor's Highway Safety Program.
Wednesday night edition, Northside Automotive Statewide Sportsline. Garrett Cullen, Greg Hunter are with you until 7 o'clock. Again, the Metro News High School Sportsline, 7 o'clock until 9 o'clock tonight, live streaming there, WVMetroNews.com. Stephen Lassen here in just a couple of seconds from Athlon Sports. But first, this reminder, you can join the Greenbrier Valley Brewing Company for their Arts and Ales at the Brewery event. That's this Friday in Maxwellton. Local professional artist Rose Dobbins, Pamela Gatons, known for their workshops at Carnegie Hall and the Greenbrier, will both be on hand to help you paint, offering lively demos, personal guidance. Enjoy the mountain taste of Greenbrier Valley craft beer while stretching your creative muscles. Real mountain flavor, you'll find it here, Wild Wonderful, West Virginia. To the phone, Stephen Lassen has connected with us from Athlon Sports. Stephen, good to have you back on. How you been, man?
I'm doing good, guys. It's good to talk to you once again. Hard to believe the regular season is already over. We're talking bowl games, but hey, we've got a pretty exciting postseason slate coming up, I think.
Yeah, and you guys at Athlon have been putting out your postseason awards. Specifically, you did so yesterday for the Big 12. Oklahoma quarterback Baker Mayfield, the Offensive Player of the Year. You had Andrew Billings of Baylor, the Defensive Player of the Year. Bob Stoops, the Coach of the Year. Let's start with those. What all went into those selections, and how did you see it play out in your mind?
Yeah, the Offensive Player of the Year award, I actually thought Corey Coleman from Baylor about midway through the season kind of had a tight grip on this award. But once Baylor started to have its injuries take a toll at quarterback, the award kind of shifted to Baker Mayfield, especially since Oklahoma got better over the course of the season. Mayfield really asserted himself as a Heisman contender, the best quarterback in the Big 12 over the second half of the season. The Defensive Player of the Award, I thought, was a lot tougher because you had a couple of players were really in the mix. You looked at Emmanuel Ogba from Oklahoma State, a really good edge rusher. It kind of creates a lot of havoc in the backfield. Andrew Billings was banged up. He got hurt against West Virginia with an ankle injury, but he's just one of those guys that his impact kind of goes beyond the stat sheet. Those big defensive tackles that almost take up the middle and allow the edge rushers to get after the quarterback. And we just thought with the way that, how valuable he is to the defense, we gave the nod to Billings. Coach of the Year, it was tough between Stoops and Gary Patterson. It almost seems strange to still consider Gary Patterson the Coach of the Year candidate, but I think you have to when you look at all of the injuries TCU had to overcome. They nearly beat Oklahoma on the road as a backup quarterback, but at the end of the day, we went with Bob Stoops just because Oklahoma finished last year 8-5 to come back this year and be a playoff contender. But Stoops, Mayfield, and Andrew Billings kind of our three major award winners.
Patrick Mahomes from Texas Tech was your breakout player of the year, but anybody else within the league that sort of jumped out of nowhere for you that landed on one of your first or second teams?
I think the guy that at the beginning of the year was maybe tagged as an under-the-radar candidate to watch is Mike Warren, the running back at Iowa State, redshirt freshman, had a kind of a breakout season, ended up on our second team. Iowa State's one of those jobs, and I think with Matt Campbell coming in there, the new coach, and his track record of developing running backs. I think Mike Warren has the potential to be one of the next stars of the Big 12, especially after the good freshman season that he had. And a guy that won runner-up award for us was Wendell Smallwood at West Virginia. Coming into the year, he was a guy I thought maybe could make second or third team all Big 12 honors, depending on how many carries and opportunities he had. He actually ended up on our first team in our kind of our all-purpose / running back position for West Virginia. So I think the running back position really had a couple of standouts, and I mentioned Mahomes too. Always Texas Tech quarterbacks are going to put up huge numbers, but I think he's a guy, as we look ahead to 2016, will be one of the front runners to have all conference honors in the Big 12.
All right, now having said all of that, what was your take on the Big 12 specifically, just as a whole this year? Baylor, TCU get all the hype in the preseason. At the end of the day, it's a little bit of the same old as Oklahoma wins the title. They're into the college football playoff. We have our TVs on in here, and they were showing some highlights just a little bit ago of that comeback for the Sooners against Tennessee and how huge that was nationally now, looking back on it, the fact that they were able to come back and win that game. But what was your take on the Big 12 and specifically Oklahoma getting into the playoff?
I think it was a good thing for the Big 12 to get Oklahoma into the playoff, because last year all the talk about the Big 12 was they need to have a conference championship game. They need to expand to 12 teams. And I think what it showed this year was a 10-team format can work. And I think a 12-team format can also hurt you. But I think that getting Oklahoma into the playoffs sort of quiet some of that expansion, some of that conference championship talk. It was really one of those things that had the Big 12 missed on a playoff team this year, the conference would have had to go through another offseason of, do they need to expand? Do they need to add another team? Do they need to have a conference championship game? What about scheduling? Just getting Oklahoma in there sort of erases some of those problems. And I think what's interesting is the injuries that took a toll on Baylor and TCU. And I think what it goes to show you is, from year to year, you almost have to have everything go right. TCU had everything go right for it last year. They nearly made the playoff. Injuries, roster turnover took a toll on TCU. Quarterback injuries at Baylor. Just almost unlucky moments knocked Baylor and TCU out of the mix this year. And I think when you look down the conference, there was almost a kind of a line. You had Baylor, TCU, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State. You had a middle tier, and then you had kind of a clear bottom tier. And you're still trying to figure out what's going on at Texas. They missed out on a bowl game this year. Looking ahead, think they'll be better in 2016, but you're still not sure. There's still a lot of question marks about that team. But overall, I think a good year for the Big 12, but also room to grow going forward.
And this is still a relatively young league. Obviously there are a lot of juniors or third-year guys that you don't know if they're going to declare draft eligibility. I think that Corey Coleman is already one of those who said he's going to leave. So depending on those decisions, but there are a lot of sort of the top end, especially offensive players that should be back. P. Ryan Mayfield, Seth Russell obviously will be back. Mahomes, a lot of the star power still will be here.
Absolutely. I think as you look ahead to 2016, I think it's probably fair to say that Oklahoma has to at least start next season as one of the front runners to be in the college football playoff. As you mentioned, Mayfield's coming back. P. Ryan, Joe Mixon was a guy that got more involved over the course of the season. And Oklahoma had a lot of youth on its offensive line. That's a group that can get better in 2016. I think Baylor, they have to have better luck at quarterback next year, whether that's Chris Johnson or Stidham or Seth Russell. Somebody will stay healthy. They always find receivers. And optimistically, the TCU, keeping Doug Meacham as the offensive coordinator and Sonny Cumbie coming back as well, they have Kenny Hill, the Texas A&M transfer, who might start for them next year. So while they'll miss Trayvon Boykin, they do have a pretty good replacement waiting in the wings. So you're kind of almost as standard as usual in the Big 12, a lot of promising offensive talent. And I think as we see, Texas could get a little bit better next year. I think Texas Tech will get better. This league, I think as a whole, some of these teams in that 5 through 8 range could take a step forward next season and make the league a lot stronger and a lot deeper.
There's about 500 bowl games that are set to get underway this weekend starting on Saturday. Give me, aside from the semifinal playoff matchups, give me a bowl game or two that really have caught your eye and you're looking forward to seeing.
I think it's the Alamo Bowl between TCU and Oregon. I think as much as I like watching good defenses, it's going to be fun to watch TCU and Oregon, just two wide-open offenses going back and forth in the Alamo Bowl. And Oregon was one of the hottest teams at the end of the regular season. Once their quarterback, Vernon Adams, was healthy off of a finger injury from earlier this year, and TCU may get Josh Doxson back for the bowl game. You're going to see a lot of points in that bowl game. I think that's going to be really one of the more entertaining matchups outside of the college football playoff. And also another game, too, Baylor and North Carolina. That's another one of those, 45-41 potential type of games. Baylor at quarterback may not have Jarrett Stidham. It looks like Chris Johnson should be back, though. And as long as Baylor has Chris Johnson or Stidham back, they're going to put points on the board. North Carolina can match them. I think those are two of the more just interesting matchups from an offensive perspective that if you like offense, those are going to be the two to tune into.
What do you make of, obviously, the Cactus Bowl here we're focused on for West Virginia? A couple of teams that probably had bigger expectations coming into the season and winding up in the Cactus Bowl. What do you make of that matchup?
The first impression when I saw this game was I think there's a lot of bowl games this year that are kind of 50-50, very even matchups. And I think you could kind of say the same thing about this one. And the first thing that came to mind was the Dana Holgorsen versus Todd Graham storyline. These two guys have a little bit of a track record going back to Conference USA and Tulsa and Houston. And, it's probably safe to say that both of these coaches really want this game. Arizona State has been pretty good this year at stopping the run. They're one of the top 3 defenses in the Pac-12 against the run, but they haven't faced a lot of attempts this year. And I think that's where West Virginia can test this Arizona State team. Arizona State, probably one of the more disappointing teams in the Pac-12 this year, only finished 6-6. A lot of people thought they could be a preseason top 25, top 15 team, maybe even win the Pac-12 South. So I think it's a chance for both teams to maybe salvage the season a little bit, build a little bit of momentum for the offseason. But I think on paper, overall, it looks pretty even. I think it's going to come down to Arizona State. They're very aggressive. They can force turnovers. They can also give it away a lot. If West Virginia can establish the run, play a mistake-free game, I think West Virginia has a good shot to win.
Who do you guys like in the college football playoffs?
The two matchups are really interesting because I think they're very similar. Oklahoma and Clemson, more of an offensive kind of shootout type of game. Michigan State and Alabama, a little bit more defensive-minded. So you kind of have two similar styles facing off in these games. I like Alabama a little bit more convincingly than I do Oklahoma. I like Oklahoma to beat Clemson, but I think it's going to be close back and forth. One of the difference in the game, it could be which defense gets one or two stops at a critical point. Clemson, with Deshaun Watson, their quarterback, he ran for over 100 yards in 4 of their last 5 games. So he went from being good to really good in the second half of the season. And if Oklahoma can contain that and continue to keep up the momentum they established at the end of the year on offense, I like Oklahoma. I'm just not sure Michigan State offensively can be able to line up and run the ball against Alabama's defense. Connor Cook's going to have a huge game for Michigan State to win. I'm not sure they can. So I like Alabama and Oklahoma to meet in the national championship this year.
Well, sounds good, Stephen. Great stuff as always. Appreciate the time. Should be fun as we get those bowl games started up this weekend, and we'll be in touch down the road, okay?
Absolutely, guys. Anytime. Thanks for having me on.
There you go. Stephen Last and Athlon Sports do a great job. Encourage you to check out their stuff. Check out Stephen's stuff. We've got a final break to take. We're back with more right after this.
West Virginia has balanced its budget on the back of the coal industry ever since we became a state 150 years ago. Historically, the coal industry and coal-fired electric utilities have accounted for over 60% of all business taxes, while high-energy wages contribute a disproportionate share of income taxes, and coal severance dollars sustain important programs in all counties. All told, the industry infuses over $26 billion to our state's economy. Coal alone has paid down nearly $1 billion of the state's workers' compensation debt. Consequently, all state businesses have experienced major reductions in workers' comp benefits. The coal industry has always supported our people and our economy, but it's under attack from the Obama administration and the EPA. It's fighting to survive. Coal taxes in West Virginia are higher than our surrounding states. We're losing coal markets to our neighbors. Let's get our mines and coal miners working again. Support a reduced tax rate for mining, paid for by West Virginia Coal Association.
The Northside Automotive Statewide Sportsline returns in 2 minutes. On Metro News. For 30 years, the voice of West Virginia.
This fall, not all blockbusters are movies. The Jeep Black Friday Blockbuster Sales Event. It's the must-see event of the year. Well-qualified current lessees of competitive vehicles get a low-mileage lease on the 2015 Grand Cherokee Laredo for $279 a month.
There. Just 5 more minutes. Almost home.
Statistics show that 80% of auto fatalities occur close to home on rural roads.
Cops.
That's why law enforcement is stepping up rural patrols and cracking down on impaired driving. If you are over the limit, you are under arrest because drinking and driving don't mix. Remember, over the limit, under arrest. This message brought to you by the Governor's Highway Safety Program.
Take my hand and come with me because you look so fine that I really want to make you mine. I say you look so fine that I really want to make you mine.
Final segment, Northside Automotive Statewide Sportsline, Garrett Cullen and Greg Hunter. Some time here if you do want to jump in for your phone calls. 1-800-765-8255, 1-800-765-TALK. I mentioned earlier, Coach Huggins with the media earlier today here in Morgantown, looking ahead to tomorrow's matchup against Marshall, and he was asked about just the significance of this series. Is it just another game?
It's not just another game. We went to Charleston, played a really good JMU team, had 8,000 there. This one sold out.
Right.
So it's not another game. I mean, that's because of proximity. You know, proximity to the schools and proximity to the fan bases are going to have a big crowd, or at least we are this year. We didn't have much of one last year.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's not been just another game. You think back to West Virginia teams that have gone on to Sweet 16 appearances, Elite 8 appearances. Doesn't matter. Still a close game against
Absolutely.
Marshall. Last year, if you think back to that one came down to just 3 points.
Sure.
69-66. West Virginia got the win in Charleston. Now, you teased this question a little bit ago, Coach Hunter, about does Coach Huggins want to see the series against Marshall continue?
What I don't want to do is get caught up in all that BS. You know, I want to try to keep myself above that. Just trying to kill my image. See, I have this pristine image, and you're trying to kill it. So stop.
It was a nice way of just shaking that question off completely.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Easy to say, yeah, I'd love it.
So
But he didn't say that.
That should answer the question without directly answering the question. But let's go ahead and a little more on this game specifically for this year. Coach Huggins was asked about the difference in this Marshall team over the last week and a half. We talked with Steve Cotton there, but just been improved shooting for the Herd, and Coach Huggins said the same thing.
The biggest thing, I think the last 3 games they've really made shots. I think that's the biggest difference. When they make shots, they can spread you. They're big, just bounce it pretty well. They've shot it really well. Luke's shot it terrific the last 3 games. They're on a 3-game win streak, and it's because they're really making shots.
How about their offensive style?
They just spread you. You know, they try to spread you and penetrate and pitch. It's what the game's become. Ball screen slips, dribble handoffs. It's everything bouncing the ball.
All right, one final cut here from Coach Huggins. He was asked on his team, is he seeing West Virginia get better?
You know, we get better, and then we kind of level off, and then we get better. We're getting better. I think we're getting more solid defensively. We're not giving At least we didn't give quite as many straight line drives. We just get so spread out. We got to be able to guard the ball.
Now, Coach Hunter, you asked Steve Cotton about Marshall. Are they going to be able to handle West Virginia's pressure? How do you think they will handle that? And you look back to last year, the Mountaineers forced 24 turnovers and outscored the Herd 33-12 in points off of turnovers. So they didn't handle it very well a year ago.
Yeah, and I mean, isn't that always the key to any game that West Virginia plays?
Yeah.
I mean, if
It's
they
still
can,
a 3-point game, though.
Sure, but you got to create turnovers and score off of them if you're West Virginia. And then, as you saw, I mean, you saw against Virginia, and then you saw this past weekend against Louisiana Monroe. Obviously, now 2 different teams of various talent levels, but if West Virginia can make shots as well, make 3-point shots, then it's really, really difficult because it's got other ingredients. But those ingredients of Devin Williams inside and the ability to turn people over aren't as pronounced if they can't also score from the outside.
And you look at West Virginia being able to score from the outside. Javon Carter, Daxter Miles, they both come in averaging 12 points per game on the year. Miles closer to 13. But you think of them, and hard to believe they're just sophomores.
Yeah,
they feel like your veteran go-to shooters.
Well, they are. I mean,
they are
the perimeter. I mean, they've been here as long as any of
sophomores.
the guards, really.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, Jay Sean Page and Tariq Phillip also, they're older in terms of eligibility, being a senior and a junior respectively. But obviously, junior college guys, they're young too to the system. But so we'll see. I mean, this has always been an incredibly interesting game. And the cliche of throw out the record is never more appropriate. It's it's so overused in every aspect. This is the one game that it really matters.
Yeah, it should be a good crowd. I know just yesterday they had only a handful of tickets left. Not sure if they've sold those out completely yet, but not a whole lot of tickets remaining. So should be a big crowd in Charleston, and we'll talk about it more coming up tomorrow night on the Sportsline as well. A baseball note from today, if you missed it, the Reds trading all-star third baseman Todd Frazier. That's a 3-team deal. He goes to the Chicago White Sox. Cincinnati receives 3 prospects from the Dodgers in that deal. Frazier, 255, 35 home runs, 89 RBIs last season with Cincinnati. Stay tuned. It's the Metro News High School Sports Line coming up next, 7:06 until 9 o'clock. For our producers this evening, Joe Nelson, Deborah Martinelli. For Coach Hunter, I'm Garrett Cullen. Have a good night. We'll see you.